President Obama thinks he's a king. It started when the Obama administration yesterday appointed Richard Cordray as the new consumer protection czar, despite the fact that he was not approved by the Senate. Just the day before, on Tuesday, a reporter pressed the White House spokesman, Jay Carney, on claims this administration is acting like, quote, a monarchy. Take a listen.
On the domestic question, could you give us a little bit more clarity on this with or without Congress? Because it's being interpreted by some, Gingrich, for example, as virtually a monarchy.
We can't wait for Congress to act. And when Congress refuses to act, when Republicans choose the path of obstruction rather than cooperation, then the president's not going to sit here. This gridlock in Washington is not an excuse for inaction.
Joining me now, former Clinton campaign advisor Simon Rosenberg, who is the director of the New Democrat Network, and syndicated radio host Mike Gallagher, who is also a Fox News contributor. All right, guys, thank you both so much for being here.
Sure, Megyn.
We can't wait, maybe fine in principle. It's not fine if the president is doing things prohibited by the separations of powers. I mean, there's a reason we have 3 branches of government. So this comes down to whether he's overstepped that line here. Mike, I'll start with you. Has he?
Well, I mean, this is not the first time a president has done these kind of recess appointments. In fact, he hasn't done as many as George W. Bush did. So, you know, I'm going to be fair and balanced here in our Fox News tradition and point out that this isn't unique to President Obama. Having said that, you know, the president has some pretty powerful enemies over these kinds of appointments, particularly the one with Cordray. I mean, when you've got the powerful U.S. Chamber of Commerce that expresses disappointment in what the president did. I mean, I'm just so uncomfortable as a consumer and as a citizen to see that the president continually at loggerheads with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I think that's real problematic for President Obama, and it ought to be noted. I also think it's appalling when his spokesman literally says we'll do this with or without Congress. I know Congress's approval level is in the toilet, but still, you're right. We have branches of government, Megyn, that ought to be respected. And I think any of us Obama critics who've been told of his narcissism and his will to get things done his way or the highway aren't really surprised by this latest round.
Simon, Ed Henry was on earlier reporting that during the Bush administration, you're not supposed to make a recess appointment if the Senate is technically not in recess. And so during the Bush administration, Harry Reid had the Senate in recess just a little bit over the course of the 3 days to sort of say, we're here, you can't do it. Apparently, President George W. Bush honored that, which is why he said Republicans are so angry about what the president is doing now. Is that fair?
Well, I think it's important I want to pick up on what my colleague said, is that at this point, George Bush had appointed 5 times as many recess appointments as President Obama had. It's a common thing that's been done. It was done much more actually under the Bush administration than has been done under the Obama administration. And I think, you know, the president is the CEO he's a CEO. He has tens of thousands of people that work for him. He needs his team in there to do the people's business. The Republicans have overstepped their bounds recently in the way that they have blocked recess, appointments of people that are needed to run the government. I mean, these specific recess appointments were enabling these agencies to actually work.
They're always needed.
No, but there's a difference between. I know, but there's a difference, Megyn, between an assistant secretary of blah, 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 right, and the head of an agency that if you don't have the head of an agency, the agency doesn't work at all. And so the president of the 160 appointments they've been waiting for picked a few people who were needed to actually make agencies work and said, we can't, because Congress has overstepped their bounds, we've looked at this, we think this is legal, we're going to go ahead and do it, and obviously there are going to be court challenges to this.
But I
appreciate what the president did.
But I just want to press you for an answer to my question, Simon, which I understand that's your argument, but I just want you to address that sort of disparity in the way President Bush handled it and the way President Obama is handling it. I know President Bush made the recess appointments, but when the Senate was technically in session, apparently he acceded to Congress and did not do it, and this president is not doing the same.
Agreed. I think circumstances are different. I think what the Republicans have been doing is much more extreme than what happened under Harry Reid and the Democrats with George Bush. They've gone too far. They've blocked too many people. It's affecting the ability of the government to function. Barack Obama was elected by the American people. They're his boss. His job is to run the government for their benefit. He's doing the right thing when the Republicans stepped normal bounds.
What say you, Mike? This is a guy who's going to run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and 3 members to the NLRB, which, resolves labor disputes, an important matter in the country.
And, of course, we're all painfully aware of the ridiculousness of the NLRB's attempt to tell Boeing who they could hire and run jobs out of this country. I mean, that was a big black eye for the Obama administration, so that's a big important distinction. Also, an important distinction you made, Megyn, is the way that President Bush did respect the process and honor the process, and my colleague Simon acknowledges that this is unprecedented. It goes back to the philosophy that a lot of liberal Democrats have, that this president is somehow, and as Simon put it, a CEO. He's not the CEO. He's the President of the United States and is expected to have some degree of workmanship with the United States Congress. And this is not a guy who respects the rules. I mean, this is a president who does it like I said earlier, his way. And so when he goes into these uncharted waters, again, to those of us who don't like what he's doing as president, it's not a big surprise. He does not respect the confines of the office of the presidency. He goes into uncharted waters and has people giving cover for him by saying, well, you know, Republicans are obstinate. You talk about obstinacy, this is obstinate, what the president is doing.
Panel, thank you both so much.